Hello and good morning, everyone. Sorry I'm late. We had storms. We had storms in the night, and I completely forgot that my computer had to be restarted because all the power went out, which is pretty rare for us, actually. But anyway, sorry. So I took up and I was like, whoops, my computer is not on. I thought I was going to just be able to sit down and start. Okay, anyway. So, warm-ups. This topic comes up a lot in our cello playing world. What do you do to warm up? What is a great warm up? Well, what is the point of a warm up? Well, it's one thing is to prevent injury, and oh, thank you, VX9X. Loved the stream last night. Oh, I appreciate that. That was a lot of fun. It's fun to go on at that time of day and just be with all those people all around the world, isn't it? It's pretty neat. It's pretty neat. As just as a side story, I remembered I was like, I really enjoyed this, and I think I got a taste of that from my grandfather. My grandfather was a shortwave radio operator, and every once in a while I'd see him in his office there, speaking Spanish, and he told me that he had a friend in Venezuela that he would talk to on the radio from Montgomery, Alabama. All right, anyway, so that's how they used to do it back then, if you wanted to talk across the globe. Okay, so warm-ups. What is the point of warm-up? What I was about to say was yesterday I was in the yard for most of the day with a stump grinder. All right, and digging up stumps and messing with this machine. And so I guess this is fortuitous, a good coincidence that here I am and my muscles are pretty sore and my hands are pretty tight. Some of you may have seen the community post where I put the KT tape, the kinesiology tape, on my hands because I was starting to get some pretty bad blisters, and I got a pretty gnarly one over there already. So I'm coming into this warm-up not wanting to further, do any more damage to myself, and just feel comfortable doing what I'm doing. Of course, stretches are good. Oh, that feels good. I'm going to stretch. This is for my shoulder. Okay. And, it's a different machine. It's a machine I've never used before in the yard. I love doing yard work, actually. I mean, I just love being outside, making things look nicer. So there's some parts of my arm down here that are pretty sore because it's like a heavy vibrating machine. All right, so I want to stretch my shoulders. I like to stretch my triceps here. Oh, this helps get my back stretched out too. And because I feel so stiff from yesterday, probably don't want to do anything fast. How about some whole notes? Okay, how about just some whole notes? All right, make sure we're in tune. A440. Let's see, how about let's start there. Do a little G minor. know, and if I feel anything, by the way, if the audio is ever wonky, if something ever sounds too loud or too soft, please let me know. Usually try to have the microphone close to me, but then it gets in the way of bowing. So hopefully I'm speaking loud enough. Hopefully it's not too quiet there on your end while I'm talking. And so while I'm playing slowly there, I'm wanting to, if there's any kind of like tension, I definitely want to address that, right? Because the whole point of this is the physical aspect of it, where I'm trying to coax my body into being ready to play cello for the day. And so, for example, you know, it's like I'm stiff, I'm sore, my body is tired. One thing is like, oh boy, my hand is getting lazy, and I can feel my index finger over here overworking. And so while I'm going slowly, as I, you know, work on a lot, is making sure my hand is hanging so that my whole hand is working, and I'm not overusing my index finger, that I'm not or I shouldn't say over-pronating, but pronating actually in the wrong direction, right? Because usually what happens is if this index finger is doing too much of the work, I'm actually going to end up pulling this bow the wrong direction and not getting a very good sound here. Do you recommend warming up with the slow open strings? Sure, absolutely. Anytime you can be using that time but you're really thinking about your form here, you know, what's your arm doing? So you're really opening up the arm. Hand is staying where it's supposed to. I don't know, maybe you could add something to that, you know, after you do some open strings. This etude, I mentioned it the other night, the number, one of my faves here from the Schroeder. Oops, the stand is on the wrong side. Why is the stand over here? It's like, sometimes I use music and sometimes I don't. This etude number, where is it? Ah yes, number 23, that's the one. Okay. You could do this number 23, say with the metronome, but just do the open strings. All right, let's say, I'm gonna leave it on 110 where I was playing the scale earlier. Let's just do some practicing the open strings. You know, the whole idea behind doing just open strings or just doing pizzicato for the left hand is that you're isolating something so that you can focus more deeply on it, all right? So maybe you do those open strings for a while as your warm-up, but then, and before you ever get to number 23, say it's going to be your warm-up piece for the day, maybe I could just make up my own little scale on the A string and start adding the left hand, but without looking at the music, right? Right, because that's a distraction, because, you know, to learn to play those notes. Maybe I could just go... play a little chromatic scale. So I'm doing something with my left hand, and then reverse that. Or maybe I could reverse it and go D-A. again, I'm catching myself. I'm catching myself to see if, what am I doing? I'm still practicing when I'm doing the warm-up. All right. So if I hear myself being uneven, okay, while I'm going slow, then yeah, I fix that. Other warm-up things I do, which I always recommend, is you want to play something, you want to do something that's familiar. Also, one thing I love is, hold on, let me grab something off the shelf. This is a book I played out of in Alabama. It's a wonderful book of hymns and songs with lead sheets. I mentioned wanting to playing familiar tunes. Here's one. My Holy Shepherd. Oh, it's a C major. All right. So. Getting myself started with the book, but then seeing if I can play it from memory. Maybe I do it up an octave. Just lots and lots of ringing tones in that little tune, and it's something that's familiar to me. And I can, I get the book out because I need a reminder of how it begins, but then I can try to play it by ear, and really just focus on following the sound. I love warming up with double stops. There's a lead sheet thing in here, or however. Add your own bass line in there. And of course, all right, my fingers are feeling a little bit better now. All right, my left hand is getting warmed up. Let's do something a little more challenging, but that's also great for warming up and just getting my hand set, which is practicing in thirds. Since we're in C major here, let's do some C major thirds. Since this is for the purpose of warming up here, I'm really making sure that my left hand is staying relaxed. And also to practice that relaxing, no tension, just the bottom note. go up into another octave. Why is that G to B so hard? Here's F sharp to A, F to A. There it is. Oh, I guess I need to practice my thirds up there. Anyway, I think double stops are great to practice on, all right, because then you really feel like your hand has, a knowledge of the fingerboard. Then, of course, getting into our regular scale routine, which I always recommend, which I recommended the other day in the scale live stream, which is to do things in pairs. Let's go back to major for a second since we're here. And if the scales are unfamiliar to you, maybe just do one octave like that. That really, really helps. I know I'm going a little bit faster now, and hopefully I lost my train of thought. Going a little bit faster because that is the point we're trying to get to. Get to a point where we feel comfortable. And I'm stretching out my fingers here. Yes, because my hands are very, very tight. All right. I often feel a lot of, it's right across this joint here, right at the top of my palm. All right. Stretch it out. Oi. It is very overworked from yesterday. This is a reminder, because oh, you did the stream last night at 11. You weren't talking about being sore then. Remember, we work on stuff, and then when you exercise, which is what you're doing, is this is kind of a form, is a physical activity, right? Your muscles are learning things, and when muscles are learning or they're exercising, they're being broken down, and then you sleep and you rest, and your muscles build back up again, better, newer. They know something more. That information becomes solidified in them, which is a reminder here as I'm sitting here stretching, and I was just talking about this on Thursday in a lesson, is that you don't really know what you accomplished in a practice session until the next day, maybe even next week, okay? Because a student was telling me, they've been practicing, working really hard on Goldterman Concerto, and then had a day where he, was busy with work and he's getting ready to go off to college, and had a day where he didn't practice, but then still felt like the day after, which was the day of the lesson, that day after that day of no practice, he still felt like he had somehow magically improved and gotten better. And I'm like, well, you did, but it was the work you did 4 days before that. This learning and building this technique is a cumulative thing. And so, it's also a reminder not to spend too much time on any one something, because I really do believe, you do have to, make sure I'm careful saying that. You do have to spend a certain amount of time on something, okay? But I think past 20 or 30 minutes, so when I say 20 or 30 minutes on a single something, I'm talking about a single line or a single measure, because you hear these stories of, oh, I spent an hour on one shift, or I spent 2 hours on one measure. Well, you wasted your time, my friend. A good 20 or 30 minutes on a shift, or, some passage or phrase, or maybe it's one measure, and you do it and you have a good practice session, and then you get off of it, you go to something else, okay? There's too many things to practice. And also, you don't really, like I said, you don't know what you did until you come back to it the next day with fresh eyes and fresh muscles, and then you see where you are, all right? But until then, you don't really know where you are. It's just biology. So, before you spend 2 hours on one measure or one shift or whatever, and it's frustrating you, take a breath and walk away and come back tomorrow. I mean, you have to. You just have to. Let's see. In warm-up, I tend to use a tuner a lot. Sound corset app. To set my intonation and build my ear, I remove my cello tapes late. Is it a bad habit? Are you talking about just using a drum pitch? No, drum pitch is great. Drum pitch is great. I would, I think you need an assortment of solutions when it comes to intonation like that. I would say use the drum pitch, but then you do have to sometimes turn it off. Make sure you're recording yourself, okay, and listening back and saying, is it in tune? Does it sound like it's in tune? Also, if you're learning out of the Suzuki books, then using the piano accompaniment, playing along to that, is really important for your intonation, okay? So drum pitch, practice along to accompaniment, record yourself. I mean, we have to use all of these, these are all like stethoscopes, right? Diagnosing what we're doing. So no, I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. Just make sure you take it, you use it, and then put yourself in different situations to see if it's helping, if it's working. All right. All right. More streams to come today. I appreciate you guys as always, and don't forget to. I'm gonna put it on the community tab right now. What do you want the topic to be this evening? Okay, I'm gonna put it up there so everyone can vote. All right. Appreciate you guys. I will see you in the next one. Oh, I just saw that it just popped up there. Oh, you mean using the visual on the tuner? Oh, well, I would steer away from doing that a lot. Now, if you have a really hard note or you have something that you're really struggling with, is it something I would say that you would never use? There's been cases where I'd recommend it. It's pretty rare. Yeah, right? Because, what we are doing here is an oral art form. We are supposed to be listening. And what happens when you look at the tuner, okay, is that we tend to kind of like move our hand around and do things, and we just do whatever it takes. And we can do the same thing with our ears, actually, but I feel like we do it a little bit more. It gets a little bit worse when we're looking at the tuner because our eyes are so powerful, and our eyes can just take our finger and match what we see, and all good left-hand shape and form just goes out the window, right? Which is we really, really need that for our, for long-term success with our intonation. So, using the drum pitch, sound corset app, does it play a pitch? Does it play a drum pitch? I don't know that app. I have to look that one up to see if it plays a pitch. Let's see. Sound corset. App Store. I'll have to look it up later. App Store. Tuner metronome. Interesting. And there's a lot of apps like this out there. Oh, here's a metronome. That's good. How do I get to the tuner? Oh, it's still going with the metronome. Ah, see, it does play a pitch. So it plays C, D. Ah, plays a lot of stuff. There's also this number down at the bottom that looks like it will play down to, looks like C4. It's calling that C4. How do I pause that? Is that C4? Such a dark sound. It's hard to tell. Looks like the lowest it goes is C4, but you can change the octave down at the bottom. So that 4, and then you can hit the plus sign, it becomes 5 or 6, whatever. This is what I would be using now. As I said, you know, in one-off situations, if it's a really difficult note or just something you're having trouble hearing, then yeah, you could use that visual. But I'd make sure I would be using that visual in front of a mirror, okay, to make sure that my hand is set correctly. Okay, all right. Or maybe I would be doing it really, really slowly, and I'd be checking myself in context, like. I'm seeing D flat, D, E, D, D flat, D, E, D. Okay. Maybe a little bit better way to use that visual. Hope that helps. On the drone pitch, I usually use a higher pitch. I don't know if it helps me hear it better. G was flat. You know, I used to drum pitch a ton in college. Okay. All right. I will see you all on the next one.